The final, shall we say, chapter is upon us, and once the exploration of this appendix on Orpheus is complete, there'll be nothing left but to pause and look back over the high points and low points of our exploration of this very complex Wraith, the 20th anniversary edition. The appendix for Wraith, the Oblivion 20th anniversary edition, I'm not going to lie. On its very first page, I rolled my eyes and I thought, why? And there's a simple reason for that. Possibly I just wasn't in the mood for reading on that particular day, but this first page says Appendix, Orpheus. And then there's a card, like a calling card or like an advertisement, a banner ad on a website. It says, what if death wasn't the end? That's cool. What if you could die and return to your body to live again? Also cool. What if science could render death an inconvenience? Getting a little weak, but okay. And then your loved ones haven't passed on. They're here among us, and now the living may walk alongside the deceased. I'm thinking, okay, this is an advertisement for Orpheus. Orpheus, the company, you can see the logo at the bottom. There's a Twitter address or Twitter handle and a Facebook ad, and then it says 3 bullet points. If you've ever felt a feeling of existential dread, if you've ever seen a spook, specter, or ghost. And so now we're channeling Ghostbusters. Theme and atmosphere and humor, these are uneasy walking companions. And what started out okay gets derailed by giving into this joke for this reader. And I'm thinking, do I even want to read the appendix now? Orpheus was not something I paid attention to when it was new. I just was simply not in a position where I could order the books and have them sent to me at that time. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted to keep getting stuff for the World of Darkness anyway. I had reached the enough is enough stage in terms of physical product. And this, it had an effect. But I turned the page. And I'm glad I did. Because this chapter really is excellent, especially coming in its condensed form, bringing together the core and the supplements that were created for Orpheus originally into one coherent whole, marginally updated to meld with Wraith the Oblivion. It's good. In some places, it's clever. Right? Now, it has a sidebar talking about spoilers, right? Meaning the focus of an Orpheus chronicle from the point of view of these writers might be simply to explore what Orpheus is from the inside out. And this is good advice. But let's go back to the beginning. Orpheus starts out with a sidebar saying, what is Orpheus? And then a description, not exactly a history, but an introduction, a very short introduction that a game master could use or a storyteller could use to help formulate a pitch to the group. It's immediately followed by a lexicon, and this is also a really good idea because one of the very clever things done with Orpheus and done with the medium of White Wolf games is to take, repurpose, twist, make mistakes with, and add new vocabulary to a lexicon so that from the very beginning you can't help but feel like there's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of mysteries, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of stuff still to learn out there. This is well done. Orpheus isn't some kind of global, world-spanning, all-powerful entity. It's focused It has skilled members and operatives, but it's finite in scope. There's a lot it doesn't know. There's a lot it thinks it knows. And that's very, very rich material to build a chronicle from. Once we get through the lexicon, we get into the history section, which has great subheaders like Dark Days. We learn about Project Flatline and Project Echo and similar projects, different things of this government-funded, kind of secretive organization that's dealing with technology that allows humanity to cross the shroud. It then gets into discussing the shadow and how that relates to this particular version of Wraith. Talks about the quick and the dead, right? Recruitment to the agency, different elements that go into making all of this possible. What are the agents used for? Intelligence gathering, assassination, what they call. Anyway, it's conspiracy, it's spies, it's espionage after death, but while still alive. It's fascinating, right? And so the characters for Orpheus are called projectors, and we have some direct comparisons of how they are different. And all of this works and is repeatedly connected to if you're running a Wraith Chronicle, if you're running an Orpheus Chronicle, if you're running a mixed Chronicle, etc., etc., keeping these things in mind all the way through. It's quite good. Then, basically, after we get through all of the what is it, how do we play, condensed information, we get into Chronicle ideas. And these are truly excellent Chronicle ideals. On page 487, we get to the storytelling section of this appendix. It opens up with the first paragraph saying, an Orpheus Chronicle differs significantly from a standard Wraith game. Wraith usually begins after the characters have died or when their fate is inevitable, and handles the deceased character acclimatizing to the underworld. Orpheus characters are still alive, of course, but they meet Wraiths on a relatively equal playing field. At least, that's what they'd like to imagine. For all their powers and the ability to retreat to the Skinlands, projectors are interlopers in the land of the dead, playing with forces they cannot truly comprehend. The survival of Orpheus and projection technology relies on the characters being smart and cautious, both things the Orpheus group requires them not to be. So while that opening paragraph it lures you into a false sense of confidence that you know what's coming and paints the underlying question of an Orpheus Chronicle or a Wraith Chronicle with Orpheus involved in it in that kind of shaky territory that works so well to create a role-playing game setup. So we have a theme, mankind descendant. First sentence, humanity's reach exceeds our grasp, and mortality is fundamental to the human experience. A constant with which everyone must grapple, yet now. Right. This is excellent. We have discussion of running the Chronicle from the point of view of the Skinlands, looking into the Shadowlands. We have the idea of what are the main antagonists? What are places in the lands of the dead, in the underworld, that are just out of reach and that might be open to exploration? How do we think about the living from the point of view of the Wraith? What about specters, especially things like doppelgangers? How do we go about actually involving an organization in this? It discusses mixed chronicles openly. It talks about the past. It talks about things that occurred in Orpheus's past, which, well, may be ahead of it on its path going forward. Sins that they have committed that, of course, cannot be hidden in the lands of the dead. And then, the very last page of useful text is page 490. It finishes off its comments about Orpheus and these few slivers of information at the top. And then there's one last sidebar called The Shape of Things to Come. And it reminds us at the center of everything is oblivion, that all things ultimately are being devoured. Where reality and non-existence meet is oblivion, and all things are funneling toward it. So, painting that last image through the point of view of a human organization meddling with things beyond their ken, meddling with things beyond their ability, crossing over into the lands of the dead while still alive and daring to return, I think is an excellent way to end Wraith 20th Anniversary Edition, and makes this core book extremely useful. Now, while there are parts of it that I have wrestled with, and there's parts of how it was written that I have wrestled with, this is another one of those splendid chapters that works really, really well. That says, look what you can do with this game, right? Change your perspective, change your point of view. Just because the subject matter, just because the characters you're playing have finished with the lands of the living, it doesn't mean that they're finished. There's so much more out there to explore, living or dead. So the appendix, or as I like to think of it, chapter 14, is excellent and is exactly the sort of thing that I was looking for when I backed this so long ago. So there's one more main video left in this series, and then we'll get back to the usual topics of the channel. Although, in a sense, this really is the usual topic of the channel. Looking at games for what they really are, talking about playing them the way that they're written, talking about actually learning them, not just winging it, and seeing how, when we expose how they are constructed, different decisions might be made, or more care be taken in speaking to more members of the hobby. And I'm not talking about making sure we include different appearances of people, but instead recognize that we play in different ways. We come to gaming in different ways. And there are ways to talk about it.